momentarily. So hello, my name is Chuck Black. I run our National Voter Friendly Campus program, and this is our May webinar, understanding the impact of your work on diverse student populations. So today we're just gonna start with a very brief update on the Voter Friendly Campus program. Then we have 5 amazing special guests who are each going to share some insight on working with diverse student populations. Then we'll move into a brief panel, and if people have questions for them, feel free to ask. And then we'll close things out. So just to begin with, if each of our 5 speakers want to come off mute and introduce themselves, starting with Kamryn, and then you can popcorn it.
Hello everyone. My name is Kamryn Yanchick. I use she, her pronouns. I am a current Wilma Mankiller Fellow at the National Congress of American Indians in our Civic Engagement Department. Very excited to be here, and I will go ahead and popcorn it to Dylan.
Thanks, Kamryn. Also really good to see you virtually. I also see Katie Montgomery's on this call, and I haven't seen her in a while, so it's very exciting. My name is Dylan Sellers. I am the National HBCU Director for Fair Election Center's Campus Vote Project. I run our Legacy Initiative program nationally. I use he, him pronouns, and I will popcorn it to Alicia.
Thank you, Dylan. I'm Alicia Vallette. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Community College representative on Campus Vote Project's Student Advisory Board, and I also serve as the vice chair. And I am a non-traditional student at the Community College of Rhode Island. And I will popcorn it to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Cater, she, her. I am a 3rd or maybe 4th year PhD student now, somewhere in the middle at Arizona State University. And I'm also a Democracy Fellow with Campus Vote Project. Excited to be here talking about graduate students. And I will popcorn it to Emmanuel.
Hello, everyone. It's really awesome to be here. My name is Emmanuel Ahmadu, and I'm an international student from Nigeria. And I'm a 2nd year Democracy Fellow with the Campus Vote Project at the Cuyahoga Community College. And yeah, it's awesome to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So in a few minutes, you'll hear a bit more from our 5 presenters. So I just wanted to go over some few things in the Voter Friendly Campus program. As a reminder, your action plans must be submitted by May 31st. We have the form up on the Voter Friendly Campus website. So if you're finished with it now, that's great. But the deadline is May 31st. If your campus did not fill out a statement of interest, that's okay. But we would still ask if you fill that out. The goal was for us to have 350. As of right now, we're at about 358. So we of course are excited that we met that goal, but we still will welcome others into the Voter Friendly Campus program. And just a few announcements about our upcoming webinars. Because of the May holiday, instead of the last Monday of the month, the May webinar is going to be on Tuesday, May 21st, and we'll be talking with some local election officials. And then in the month of June, there will be no VFC webinar. So we are looking forward to being back here on May 21st. So without further, we'll start our presentations. And our first is on working with community college students. Alicia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chuck, and thank you for inviting me to join you all today. So like I said, I am Alicia Vallette, and I am the Vice Chair and Community College Representative on Campus Vote Project Student Advisory Board. I am a non-traditional student at the Community College of Rhode Island, and I've been a student for some time now, balancing work, family responsibilities, and just getting through college. So I first got involved with Campus Vote Project and a bunch of other national nonpartisan student voting orgs because I noticed that there were voices missing at the table, and that my experience as a student and a student leader on my community college campus trying to institutionalize nonpartisan student voter engagement, my experience was very different from what was at least visible or being advertised through different forums. And I felt that we needed more representation of the very, very diverse, heterogeneous, wonderful populations we have at community colleges. And I think the first and foremost thing that anyone looking to work with community college students has to understand is that we are not a homogenous block. Every single community college is going to be different. Doesn't matter if they're in the same state, in the same region, in the same metro area, in the same system. Every community college is going to be different. And I think that we use the phrase meeting students where they're at quite a bit, but to put that in practice for community college students means finding the people on campus who they trust. I was just speaking to our director of admissions Saturday, and he was explaining how he was helping the student who he's known for a few years get some additional services. And he's no longer even an admissions counselor. He's now the director. And the student has already been admitted for several years. But because she trusts him and that's someone in her corner, she goes to him. And that's the case with a lot of us. So
Alicia, I think you froze.
this concept of what we're trying to do, which is welcome everyone into our democracy, whether they're a voter or not. And I think that we have so many incredible resources through Campus Vote Project and Voter Friendly Campus, and that there's power in our collective knowledge and understanding and trial and error, that I think sharing these resources and coming together and just brainstorming off each other is one of the ways that I've found most effective. Because again, there's no one size fits all, and I've learned quite a bit from speaking to people at other community colleges or other 4-years, or we can always borrow something. Why reinvent the wheel? So yeah, I will stop rambling now and pass it back to Chuck.
Awesome. We will now move to Emmanuel for his presentation.
Thank you, Chuck. Really appreciate this opportunity, and it's really awesome to be among you all, working together with the same vision and goal. And I'm also thankful for Katie that is here to like motivate me and all that. Yeah. So being on a democracy fellow, just like I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of when I joined Tri-C the first that was fall 2024, for 2021 because I'm having like two major now, like I'm gonna like graduate with two majors. So at the point that I got into school, I was pretty much like interested to know what's going on and all that, and to like see how I can be involved, because that's actually like my type of personality. I have that kind of connectedness skills, always like wanting to like know about what's going on and try to see how to be involved, to also connect others to like resources that they need. And that kind of made me know about student government first. And when I got into student government, I was like, oh, um the CVP and Democracy Fellow, and from there I kind of volunteered to like do some kind of video productions and all that. I was like joining them in the dancing and awareness program at that point. And yeah, and from there I kind of just applied to joining Democracy Fellow. And it's been a very awesome journey, learning from Kaylee and other awesome people around. And pretty much like this kind of journey kind of inspired me as an international student, understanding the difference, in my journey, in what goes on in my country, and how civic engagement is being viewed here. And so like for me, my interest was to like try to bridge the gap by bringing in like the experience and that passion of what I was supposed to like experience back home, like what I felt like civic engagement is supposed to be like, for younger people, for students and all that, for them to be like involved and just knowing what's going on and them going out to vote and all that, because that isn't really there in my country, Nigeria and all that, like, because people sometimes are denying their right to vote, even though they want to like exercise the vote, their right to vote. And me understanding these differences, I was like, no, like I have to do whatever I can to make people know about that people have their right to vote, and they have, they're actually the voice of whatever they desire to see in their society. Like you can't just be quiet and envisage maybe change to happen. Like you have to be involved, and you being involved is going to register and to vote and all that. So that kind of just inspired me and also contributed a lot to my involvement in different soap opera, film, and like different projects that we did, tabling event, and just collaborating with like student government and different agencies to just ensure that civic engagement is kind of upheld with yeah, like is so the journey has just been born out of my experience back home. I know that, so that has been like the source of everything. And yeah, and I'm so much eager and just open-minded to keep learning and using what I've learned, to impact others positively. And I'm so honored to have you all. Thank you.
Awesome. And I just want to say that I think the work you've done at Tri-C is very powerful. So we're very thankful for your perspective and for your time.
Thank you.
Moving on to HBCUs, Dylan.
Yes. So my name is Dylan. As I said before, I am Chuck's favorite coworker. And so I'm glad that I got the opportunity to come and join one of his calls to talk through what we do and how best to work with HBCUs. He only gave me 5 minutes to do this when he knows that's going to be a difficult thing for me to do. So here we go. Working with HBCUs in a nutshell, and this is also something you can take to working with Black students at predominantly white institutions, because if you are not aware, Black students at predominantly white institutions create their own institution within the institution, right? They function differently than HBCUs, and they function differently than your institution, right? And so some of that is understanding that and being able, thanks, Kristen, some of that is taking that and being able to engage with them where they are. I also want to give this principle of use principles, not directives, right? Just because you understand what works for you and what has worked for you doesn't mean that it's going to work for that particular community, whether that be the Black students at PWIs, and particularly at HBCUs. Part of the success of Black people existing in this country has been us getting the franchise, right? And so in our communities, it's part of our culture to understand this fact. It has evolved from this person is going to help us to this policy is going to help us. So a lot of the conversation has changed from person to policy. And so being aware of that when you're talking to them about voting or getting involved in your programs, if you are pushing that this person is going to somehow save us, that is not going to work well for you. But if there are policies that you are currently pushing, that I think that helps. When it comes to working with HBCUs in particular, if you happen to have some in your state, this is a good opportunity to engage with their student body governments, other organizations on their campuses that may be like the organizations that you have on your campuses. This is some exchange of ideas, exchange of culture. This is you having the opportunity to reach outside of your walls and figure out how best to support the work that's going on in your state that is impacting those institutions as well. But don't forget about the Black students that are on your campuses, right? And so I think that there's a lot more that I could say, but I have a time limit. And so Legacy Initiative put out something called an insights brief on our website. It's campusvoteproject.org/legacy initiative. When you get there, you will know that you made it to the page because you will see my beautiful face with a video to tell you all about the Legacy Initiative program. But there's also a document there called the Insights Brief, which will walk you through some of the things that HBCUs have determined are the barriers on their campuses and some of the solutions that they have identified. It is possible to retrofit some of those principles, some of those ideas to PWIs. So it's not a copy paste job. Most of this has to do with relationships, right? And so you have to be in relationship with people for them to care about what you're talking about. And that's universal. But it's particularly true at HBCUs and in Black communities, PWIs. I hope I've hit my time. I think I'm done.
Wonderful, as always. All right, Native American students and tribal colleges. Kamryn, take it away.
Thank you so much. It's been so great to hear everyone's presentations so far. This is a really important panel and topic to address. So I'm very, very fortunate to be a part of it and get to talk about Native American students and particularly tribal colleges and universities as well. I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about my personal experience and how I got into this work. I was as a student at the University of Oklahoma, which is not a tribal college. It's a PWI, but it's a PWI with a very active and vibrant Native American student community, which really made my experience as a college student so special as a Native student myself. And I first got involved in this world of student voting, like I said, as a student vote organizer myself. I got to serve on the Campus Vote Project Student Advisory Board as a representative for Native American students, because that was really what I saw in my work, is that I got involved with the campus-wide student vote organization, and we were doing all of this outreach to serve every student on our campus. But then I was also deeply involved in Native American student life and our student organizations that were specifically serving Native students, even our Native American Studies academic department. That was really where I called home on campus. And there was kind of this disconnect in the outreach that was not going really to Native students in particular. and how Native students can be left out of the conversation. So that's how I just found my passion about bridging those conversations between Native students and then democratic engagement outreach on college campuses. So with the National Congress of American Indians, we house the Native Vote Project. It's nativevote.org. You can find it, some information on our website as well. NCAI is the largest, oldest, and most representative advocacy organization advocating on behalf of tribal nations and interests of Native American people. And civic engagement and voting rights has been part of our mission since the very first gathering that we had 80 years ago, dealing with voting rights, particularly with a case that was going on in New Mexico. And so voting rights has definitely been a very critical piece of advocacy and outreach for NCAI. And in addition to being a Congress and a place for Native leaders to gather, and to make policy recommendations, which our team then goes and advocates for. We also do, like I said, have this Native Vote initiative that works on kind of more of that outreach and education effort, getting not only tribal nations to help relay that messaging to their citizens and their community members, but also to help support Native American voter activists themselves. And doing this outreach in their own communities. And so through that, a couple years ago, we actually received some communication from the Student Congress from the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, which is basically the big organization that unifies all of the tribal colleges and universities across the country. And this was their student government body, basically, who was expressing that need for outreach specifically for students at tribal colleges and universities. It was something that they identified as a need, and that's something that they wanted to make sure that they felt included on. And so that was kind of the beginning of our partnership with AHEC to specifically start Native student targeted voter engagement resources and outreach. Last month we were at the AHEC National Student Conference, which was really amazing. We got to do some workshops with students, got to do some tabling, talking to students, staff, faculty, community members, nonprofit staff, all interested and invested in supporting Native students at TCUs. We also have some resources on our website. We made a voter toolkit for Native students. We have some more projects underway to help, again, do some more educational outreach, some funding opportunities as well. Also partnering with the American Indian College Fund, which also has a mini grant that they're rolling out for TCUs to implement voter registration and voter engagement initiatives as well, that we're really excited to help partner with them on. And yeah, spread the word about that. So it's been really exciting for me, as a Native student, a former Native student who really saw the need for this targeted and tailored outreach, to now be working for an organization that is helping get some of those projects underway and make a really big difference. So yeah, definitely excited to talk more, to hear questions, and talk about how you all at your respective organizations, even if they're not tribal colleges and universities, how you can take more initiatives and more conscious efforts to include Native students in your voter outreach. Like I said, as someone with personal experience as a Native student, as a Native student at a PWI, I have that experience, but then also being in this position and speaking with TCU students and staff about the NCAI initiatives that we're doing. Really, but yeah, thank you for having me. I'll pass it back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're so proud when our former SAB members take on these awesome professional jobs. So last but not least, let's talk about graduate students. And I just want to start by saying, I think too often in this work, people are caught up on students who are living there on campus, who are in their, they're working on an associate or bachelor's. But if we're truly being representative, graduate student should be part of this conversation and part of the work. So I'm super excited. Future Dr. Cater, if you want to take it away.
Thank you so much. I agree. And yes, hi everyone. Like I said earlier, I'm Lauren. I'm a third-year PhD student at Arizona State University. I'm a Democracy Fellow with Campus Vote Project, and I'm currently studying college student civic engagement for my dissertation. And I'm really excited to be able to be here talking with you all today, a little bit about supporting graduate student access to voting and just engaging them in civic engagement efforts more broadly across your institutions. So we know graduate students are generally older than the average undergrad, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're more informed or more likely to vote or more engaged across the board. Like Dylan mentioned, building relationships is really key. It's most important to know the demographics of your graduate student population and talk to them directly about their wants and needs in terms of support for civic participation. To do this, I really recommend connecting with a graduate student organization, some group that's already established, especially if your school has a graduate student government or a representative within a larger government, grad student center, an email newsletter, or graduate student representatives that maybe sit on faculty senates or other spaces. Those students are good resources to go to start with this work. Also, if there's specific clubs that cater toward graduate students, those are good places to start as well. Mostly to hear from students what's needed in terms of supporting their participation. I was also in an online master's program before I entered this in-person PhD, so I can speak a little bit more to engaging online students in engagement efforts, because I think that is really possible, and I've seen the fruits of that labor myself. So if anyone's interested, I can absolutely share my email, or we can talk about it more in the Q&A specific to online graduate students. But anyway, the NSELV reports that we get show voting rates by education level. I believe it's on like page 13 for ASU. But for example, our undergraduate voting rates increased 12% from 2016 to 2020, but only 2% for graduate students. So that is an easy data point that's coming to us that can show us that something that's working with the undergrads is not necessarily translating for the graduate students. And as I mentioned earlier, graduate students are likely older, more likely to be enrolled full-time, more likely to have dependents, and more likely to be out of state. Where undergrads are usually 70 to 80% residents, the numbers flipped for graduate students, though that also includes international students. So graduates coming in are likely coming in needing information on the voting laws in that state. So it would be really, really awesome if advisors either knew the basics on voting laws or had resources to share with students, because that's usually students' main point of contact outside of faculty. I know, though, that academic advisors are inundated with requests and have so much on their plates. So even just having a slide deck or an infographic, or knowing to connect students with organizations like this would be really, really helpful. Also, something to consider is that some students might be conducting their research outside of the United States. So it's important to do some targeted outreach in those cases and let students know that they can get an absentee ballot, just like undergraduate students doing study abroad. And the State Department has more information on that. Lastly, a large percentage of our graduate students, at least at Arizona State University, are international students or other non-voters. And I just wanted to touch on a couple ways that they can get involved in voter access movements, or that you can engage them. We did hear a little bit before, but I just also wanted to add that students can host deliberative dialogues or mediate conversations. They can participate in voter education by detailing measures on the ballot that would affect their communities or their research or people in their major. And then they can also participate in voter registration efforts, though it's important to check with local laws, because some counties don't allow undocumented students, for example, to handle voter material. But in some, I would say that the most important thing is really just to connect with the students on your campus who are doing this work. And if you don't know any, I would say advertise and look for them. Grad students are always looking for ways to get involved and connecting their research to practice, especially. So that's a great way to kind of market getting involved or getting information from these students. If you can find a way to connect it to the research that they're doing and the policy that's going to impact them, that would be great ways to kind of engage this student population in that work. So thank you for your time and all of your work, including these groups in your civic engagement and voter education work. I'm just really excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. And we definitely, I would love to have future conversations. I think your graduate thesis sounds like something Campus Vote Project would want to find out about. So how we have a few questions for the panel, and if people have questions, please put them into the chat. And it's okay if all of you don't want to answer. It'll just kind of be a first come, first serve. But in our previous webinar, we talked about forming that voting team, that voting club, that voting coalition on your campus. So from your perspectives, what is one thing coalitions could undertake to make sure students feel valued and feel like they are truly a part of the process? So is there anyone who wants to start with this question? Don't all jump at once.
I guess
Go ahead, Kamryn.
curious. I can start real quick just talking about Native students more broadly. Is a lot of the times for Native students in particular, the absence is really that first block. And I think that for a lot of these communities we've talked about, the absence is definitely there. But I think especially for Native students are already a numerical minority in the US, but then also particularly with higher education. And even in the student vote space, even broader than that, when we're looking at data that college campuses collect, not even in particularly looking at voting data, but just data in general. A lot of the times you will see Native students designated as an other category or just not included altogether, maybe an asterisk, not statistically significant. Because for a lot of college campuses, they're not Native students aren't going to be as lucky as the experience that I had to have a very active and vibrant Native student community. Those do exist, and when those do exist, partnerships are especially important. To not wait around for a Native student or a Native organization to make the first move. But when those communities do exist, even if they are small, to be very intentional about including them. So even if you don't have a point of contact who is already making that effort to bring their community into the student vote space, being intentional about reaching out. And if you are at a university that doesn't have maybe there isn't a Native student organization that's very active, or maybe it's a little harder to find that presence, not letting that be an excuse to omit Native students from your programming and from your data that you're showing, to include resources like NCAI or like Native American Rights Fund that does a lot of really great legal work and provides a lot of good educational resources to help Native communities and Native voters. Just not waiting on a community member to make that outreach if there isn't already a connection, to make sure that you're facilitating the connections when they do exist, and not putting the burden on making the community you're trying to incorporate have the burden of making all of the effort and initiatives to stay included. Again, to provide those resources when you can, regardless of if there's someone actively asking for them, providing those just because you know that they should. And hopefully, now that you've seen this video and you've heard me talk a little bit, you've heard of at least two Native organizations, NCAI, Native American Rights Fund, that are doing this work. And there's also a lot of state-specific and grassroots Native vote organizations in states across the country that are doing more localized outreach that can be really beneficial as well. So yeah, even if you don't have those connections on your campus, looking at other groups, tribes in your state, tribes in your area, and making those connections beyond what might just exist on your campus if there isn't a very large Native student population.
I just want to add just a tidge. I want to name that I have heard that it is very difficult to approach people that aren't like you to ask them to be a part of your coalition. And so I want to name that it's difficult, but also, so what, right? Just get into that thing and lead with curiosity. That's probably the best route to go, with humility and curiosity, asking questions about what might be needed and asking for help, asking for assistance, right? Those are ways to break the ice in a way that may not feel as daunting.
Just one last thing to add on to that. I echo what Dylan just said, and bringing the human aspect, because that is what makes students of all kinds feel valued, is knowing that there's somebody that values them. So being just kind of authentic with that relationship building is important. And also, in my experience, having institutionalized positions has been really helpful. So we have a set position on the coalition for graduate student, and that empties each year and is refilled each year with a new student. So just having that structure kind of set up where we know there will be representation and we know we need to involve a new student each year is really helpful to kind of build a little bit more of a developed movement, because year after year there's a new student filling into that position, and getting to know all of the different aspects that we have voice in. So yeah, any way that you can kind of build in some sort of structure to the coalition or other programs or initiatives that you're having, and have student positions that are filled, I think that is a helpful way to make sure students have at least a voice at the table. And then obviously it's really important to go past just having a representative on a coalition. We actually have to listen to them and take their say and implement things based on their experiences. So going a step past representation and treating students like humans and valuing their ideas and expertise is really important.
Amanda, you well? Any feedback? Turn on your mic.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I think basically for the program we've done at Tri-C, because coalition or collaborating with organizations or something like that, it's kind of foster successes of events and all that, and helps to deepens the impact. And so most of the time at the moment, previously we've actually been collaborating with student organizations, like student government, because I'm also part of student government, being a student government president. So it's even though I'm not currently there now, but we kind of like use this opportunity to collaborate and to work with the Democracy Fellow team and like in kind of propagating some of the awareness and also giving out flyers and all that. And it's also like part of our programs because we are trying to like strengthen the collaboration techniques by reaching out to student government members across Tracy campuses, since we have like 4 campuses and all that, so we can get more student government members trained about like what we do as democracy fellows and all that. So whenever they have like events happening there, they can just have like the flyers on their table and they can, get students informed about civic engagement, and also like from there they get to know what civic engagement is and how they can be involved and all that. So I think most students are also like getting to like understand the idea, like because the fact that we miss student being a student, most students want to like they tend to like follow what their fellow student tells them, like like when you just tell them like, hey, this is what's going on and all that, and you tell them the benefit and all that and how it's will impact them and all that. So like the recent bill that was passed, Tracy was on the ballot, and we were kind of just telling them about how those bills kind of matters and how it's going to like influence the tuition and all that. So most students were like, oh, okay. So they were like acting on that. And so I feel like collaboration and coalition is pretty much, it advances visions like this. So
Awesome. So I'll put one final question in the chat, and then if people have any questions, please feel free to put into the chat. So I think quite often, and I shouldn't say quite often, but we know on some campuses that this work sometimes will just fall on 1 or 2 staff people or students. So in your perspectives, how can we ensure this work doesn't just get put on 1 or 2 people? So anyone can respond.
I'll start with this one. This one's one of my favorites because it's a paradigm shift of how you do work personally. And typically there's the idea, well, this is very important work. And if I don't get it done, it won't be done. Some part of you has to sit in the uncomfortable space of, if we don't do this together, it won't matter. Right. And so like, doing it together is more important than you getting all of it done by yourself. What do I mean by that? So you can be a facilitator, right? And making sure that you are managing these relationships well and assessing what these other organizations or what these other students do well and put them in a position to do what they do well. And so you're facilitating. And if the ball drops, on some level, you have to let it drop in order to coach and see the responsibility, right? And so like, that's a very uncomfortable place to be because elections are very important and they have consequences. But what I've learned over the time that I've been doing this work, and I've been doing it my entire adult life, is that if I take on all of the responsibility, no one else is learning how to do it. No one else is learning the importance of it, right? And so you need to put yourself in a position where the possibility of failure is real, and you have to sit with that long enough to allow someone else to pick it up. And that's a paradigm shift in how you do the work. One of the things that I'll leave with is when I first started doing organizing work, community organizing work, one of the things that stuck with me that I was told was, you are to organize yourself out of a job. And in order to do that, you need to trust other people. Right. You need to trust that like they might know better than you. They might be able to teach you something. And they might do it differently than you, but still be as effective as you. right? And so all of those things has to come into place, and not centering yourself and your need to be the center, to build those coalitions and help sustain them.
Anybody else? So I'll give one final question, and if people have any questions in the chat, that'd be great. But I would love to hear, especially to Kamryn, but I think this would go for all of y'all. But how has the being involved in Campus Vote project, how has that helped prepare to take on the job or future jobs?
Yeah, so I'd be very happy to jump in because obviously my trajectory from student to adult worker has a very clear connection. Like I said, every day I feel very lucky and fortunate to be able to um, work in a position that allows me to use my lived experience as, you know, a former Native student doing this work, and see it progress. And I think that's something I want, especially the students that are on this call or that are listening to this in the future, to keep in mind, is that the work that you're doing right now as a student, whether it be as a democracy fellow, student advisory board member, just volunteer, you know, all of the work that you're doing in this capacity right now absolutely is, you know, valuable work experience that you should be proud of, and that you should trust yourself, that you are the expert in your own experience. You know your community best, you know your campus best. And so the experiences and the projects that you're unveiling and the research that you're doing and the connections that you're making as a student are absolutely, you know, invaluable, whether or not you want to or plan on going into a democracy related field after graduation, or just whatever experiences that you are trying to pursue after your time as a student has ended. Is that one, these are just very valuable skills, but also excellent learning opportunities. And again, you're building that breadth of knowledge, and whether that be in a career field or even just in a volunteer capacity, as I'm sure a dedicated and passionate citizen, whether or not you want that to be your full-time job, it's great experience, and it's really meaningful just to build your own breadth of knowledge and be able to take confidence in that. Yeah, like I said, for me, coming from a student to being in this space as a nonprofit staff, was also just really illuminating, because I got to see what it was like to be on both sides of it. To see when maybe there were campus administrators who weren't listening to students as much as I thought they were, but then also to, you know, be on the staff side of it and just be wanting to root for all of these students and just wanting everyone to see, you know, the power that they have and to not doubt themselves and to, you know, have grace with themselves. But I think students, as students, can be really hard on yourselves. It is, you know, challenging and taxing to be a full-time student and to also be doing this amazing work. So to be able to have that person on the other side to, you know, cheer you on and to, you know, give you permission to give yourself grace, because it can be kind of hard, I feel like, for as a student to allow yourself to have that grace sometimes. So it's just been amazing. So would definitely encourage it if you are interested. If you are interested in doing work related to Native Vote or nonprofit or tribal voting, please, you know, feel free to reach out to me as well. Would love to connect. And yeah.
Awesome. So since there weren't any questions in the chat, I would just ask that each of our panelists give like a 30-second final statement, and then we'll wrap things up. So Dylan can go first and then pass it.
30 seconds. Don't be scared, build community. You know what I mean? It's gonna be fine, and it's gonna be fun, and you'll learn some things. It'll be cool. I am going to pass it on to Lauren.
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate having graduate students represented in this space, and I'm glad that my being here and the inclusion from CVP of graduate students is going to potentially keep them on your mind when you're doing this work moving forward. So yeah, thank you. I will pass it to Kamryn.
Thank you. I think one other piece of information just to kind of take away that I didn't need to touch on too much was the importance of Native students as tribal citizens, and how for those who are enrolled citizens in a tribal nation, there's a whole other realm of democracy that we have, that we have the right and the privilege to engage in as citizens of sovereign tribal nations. So including things like tribal voting into your programming and into your education and messaging is another really important part, another crucial part, again, to make Native students feel valued, heard, and to respect and honor tribal sovereignty, and the countless tribal elections that might be going on in your state, in your area, that you might not be aware of, and that don't receive a lot of that same energy and attention as non-tribal elections may. So yeah, another just important piece that I want to leave you all with. So thank you again for including NCAI, myself, and Native students in this important conversation. With that, I'll pass it on to Emmanuel.
Thank you, thank you. So my final note would be, as an international student, I would say like that no matter like where your background is from, no matter where you're coming from and all that, or wherever you find yourself, outside your environment or outside your culture or something like that, just be open-minded, be open-minded to learn and to just be open to like learn, to observe, and to be able to contribute. Yeah, wherever space you find yourself and all that. And because I'm also like able to connect that with a recent experience I had with Katie and some other team from Tri-C, going over to Washington, D.C. and advocating for the college and all that on some of the bills that were passed, and also like mentioning that I'm part of Democracy Fellow, was really amazing to them, to the leaders and some of the senators, and they were like, wow, you're doing a great job. And so this kind of thing kind of matters, like no matter what. Yeah, so just have that interest for others or for people to know, or like, yeah, so I don't know. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I would like to thank the members of the panel. I do want to uplift that I knew Alicia had to jump half at 2:30, but we really valued all 5 of our presentations. I will send out the recording, and I look forward to seeing all of you back here on May 21st. Take care.